Hey, what's up? This is mostly a reply video to Arthur Fantastic's video about Chuck Liddell recently. I really enjoyed it, so um, I dropped a comment in his comment section. He asked me a question. I thought it'd be best to answer it in video form. Real quick, I'd like to just say, anyone watching this, you probably came here from the Boohurt content. Hope you're enjoying that. Right now, I can't film the judo that I do, which is 99% of how I spend my free time is on judo and 1% on Boohurt. But thanks to the filming rules where I do my judo, I can't record any of it because we're inside another facility where there's no filming allowed. But yeah, anyways, thanks for watching the video. And I gotta be quick because I need to go put the mats down to start practice in like 10 minutes. So basically in Arthur Fantastic's most recent video about Chuck Liddell, the question is like, why didn't people recognize Chuck Liddell as such a great karate practitioner? I think a huge part of that is because basically a lot of the karate guys after UFC 1 basically had this fear that that grapplers would show them up in an open rules competition. And so they kind of like withdrew into their own community and believed that like they had to be purists for their art to continue existing. And so when a guy like Chuck, who was well-rounded and knew how to apply his stuff in open rule set and MMA, you know, when he went out and he was successful, people didn't recognize it for karate because, you know, the karate that you do in an open rule set is not the karate that you do in a purist type of rule set, you know, that's specifically for karate practitioners. And basically the rest of this video is just about open rule sets and why I think they're super important, why martial artists who are specialists need to get back into competing in open rule sets. Like I think a great example of this is like karate combat, of course MMA, more recently like CGI, CJI, EBI, like these grappling competitions, Polaris, or sorry, not Polaris, Quintet, where like judo and BJJ and wrestlers all come together and compete under one rule set. One of the things that allows you to do an open rule set, basically what an open rule set is an open rule set is a rule set that doesn't have a rank requirement in a specific martial art. So it's got to be open to everyone, regardless of what style they do. Like, of course, you know, there's considerations of like skill level, things like that. That makes sense. But you can't be like, well, you have to be a black belt in our martial art to compete in this tournament. That's not an open rule set. Another feature of an open rule set is it has to have an objective goal. So things like knockout, submission, pins, or even like in the case of like Boohurt, for example, or sumo, like touching the ground with something other than your feet, or I think that applies in some of the older wrestling styles too, where touching the ground with something other than your feet was considered a loss. So clear objective, that means that it's not going to be tailored to just one martial art. It's more about how you make your strategy, how you apply your martial art to reaching the objective. And then of course, if the objective's not met, you either need an overtime situation that ends in a clear result or a judging criteria that everyone can agree on. Those are things like in stand-up striking, things like damage, in grappling, things like control time with like a clear definition of what control time is. And then the last thing about what makes an open rule set is an open rule set is a rule set that doesn't have any unreasonable prohibitions on techniques or strategies, or like insider rules that are basically written in such a way that only someone from a specific martial art would be able to interpret them. Examples, I think as a judo referee and judo practitioner, things that I think judo does a little poorly on this, which is why, of course, judo is like a highly specialized rule set, right? It's not made for outsiders to compete in. One of the things is like the definition of what a legal arm lock and an illegal arm lock is in judo. Judo has a really, really kind of arcane definition of what a joint lock that attacks the elbow is. Certain turning joint locks are legal in certain positions and certain ones are illegal. And basically, if you went to, 10 coaches, I think 9 out of 10 of them would get it wrong on what the actual, like, what referees are taught to enforce is. Things like that. Same thing with chokes, some of the really obscure submissions like dojime, which is basically just guard if you take a really harsh interpretation of it. I've seen referees interpret just a basic guard as a dojime because they didn't like that someone was a guard player, basically. Those are what an open rule set is. So it's something with clear objective, clear judging criteria, no unreasonable prohibitions on techniques or strategies. Why open rule sets are important? Essentially, they make arts and martial arts well-rounded. If you can just keep tailoring your rule sets that your art competes in to specifically make your art look more like itself, like judo has done recently, then you end up with martial artists who have extremely, extremely narrow understandings of techniques. You may even lose techniques from your vocabulary, like your martial arts set of things that it can do. You'll take stuff out because you think that stuff looks like it came from somewhere else, even if it is original to your martial art. All kinds of that goes on in different martial arts. You could see it in basically anything that the IOC touches. Taekwondo, karate, judo. They love to do this, take out stuff that works because they want to keep the martial arts distinct from each other. Reality testing is important. So when you compete in an open rule set, if your stuff works or if it doesn't work against people who haven't been trained like you. If you only ever compete against people who are trained with the same curriculum you are, you have no clue what the holes in your game are because you never run into people who have other techniques. Also, you get a better talent pool. You get more competitors for each tournament. Like, again, look at CJI. Like, they brought in wrestlers. They brought in, gi and no gi jiu-jitsu competitors. You get the highest level. ADCC, same thing. For many, many years, ADCC has welcomed basically any grappler to come compete under their rule set. And that's what you get, is you get the highest level of all the grapplers instead of just like the highest level of some super obscure style, right? Like if you're like, oh, this is a martial art that I've practiced in the past, Danzan-ryu Japanese Jiu-Jitsu, right? If you put on a Danzan-ryu Japanese Jiu-Jitsu nationals tournament, right? How many people are you going to have show up to that tournament? Your talent pool is extremely, extremely small. So the level that's going to compete is not the same as if you say like this is an open grappling nationals tournament or an open grappling internationals tournament where all you have to do is just show up, follow the rules, and you can compete. And then building bridges across styles. So when you run into other people that compete in a style other than yours and they do something interesting, that piques your interest and makes you want to go learn another style. And that's how you get these cool hybrid styles where people begin to put stuff together from different martial arts and integrate stuff. 10th Planet is a great example of this. 10th Planet has, like, they get made fun of for renaming everything, but like 10th Planet has, high school wrestling style techniques that have gotten integrated into it, like the Twister. It's got a ton of judo stuff. Kind of judo style ground game stuff has been integrated into it, including even terminology. That's awesome. That makes you a better martial artist. That makes you more well-rounded when you build bridges across styles like that. So finally, if open rule sets are great, how do we get more open rule set competitions? The answer is really up to organizers and up to sanctioning bodies. Obviously, if no one's willing to sanction your tournament, then you can't put it on. If no one's willing to sanction your event, you can't put it on. If you look at combat jiu-jitsu, they basically just sanction their stuff through amateur MMA rules, and just use the amateur MMA sanctioning guidelines. And that's the kind of thing you can do, is just find a different style that has a sanction that your stuff could fit under, and then specialize it. So I have a tournament coming up next Saturday. It's the first one with this rule set in this region. The USJF was willing to sanction it. It's actually their rule set, but it's a very, very open ground fighting tournament. So basically submissions and pins, no leg locks, just arm locks and chokes at the ages that can do them, and pins. But that's super, super open. If you're a wrestler, you could compete under that. If you're judo, you could compete under that. If you're BJJ, you could compete under that. It's not really that hard to put it on if you can find someone that can sanction it. So it's just about finding willing promoters and tournament organizations after you have the sanctioning bodies. And then how do we make sure that people compete in them? Affordability and quality for amateur competitors. And then for professional stuff, it's prize money and prestige. And prize money and prestige, of course, prize money is how CJI had all their success. Same thing, Karate Combat, that's how they have all their success. And then, prestige, ADCC was kind of like the most prestigious tournament in grappling for a really long time. And a great example of sort of open rule set with affordability and quality is Nagas. Basically, anywhere you go in the world, you can compete in a Naga. It doesn't really matter what martial art you do. Super open rule set. So anyways, those are my thoughts on open rule sets, and on Arthur Fantastic's Chuck Liddell video. I'm also highly influenced by Chatty's. He always, Chatty's videos, he always talks about when these styles fought back in Japan, or when catch wrestling met judo in the US in the early 20th century, that kind of stuff. I find it super interesting. He also has a really great book that I read, which is about the history of judo and where it came from. And it basically all came from open rule set competition. Sumo used to be much more open rule set. Joint locks used to be a big part of it. And throws used to be much larger part of it than they are now. So anyways, that's my thoughts. Thanks.